We're ready to go.
Okay, great deal. Give it about another minute before we get started. And here we are. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining our special series on cultural competence and race. We have a great lineup of panelists this afternoon that are willing to kind of sit down and talk to us about some of their experiences as we talk about diversity, inclusion, equity as well, and just try to, understand more and do more of um, a learning process and education on several things that are kind of happening today in society. Our special brown bag forum is really kind of focused around cultural competence and race in order to kind of also bridge and create a dialogue that is necessary for all individuals. And it's way that we can, as colleagues, kind of come together and establish a better understanding and get to know one another a little bit better. Today, I have six panelists that are here to kind of share their experiences and talk about things that are happening in our world today, but also to kind of talk about experiences from a diversity standpoint that will kind of help shed some light on a lot of the issues that we hear on the news and things that we're probably not sure of or how people feel. Each and every day we walk through our hallways when we're here in the building, and it's not COVID-19 per se, and we know one another, we meet one another, we're a family. And so in order to kind of bridge that family a little closer together with us all social distancing, we decided to have a brown bag forum and talk about some of these issues here today. Today, our guest panelists are a very wide group of folks based off years and where they are from and different things. But as many of you can probably tell, they're all minorities, and we're wanting to kind of get their feedback on several different topics today. Our first person I want to introduce is Mr. Kelsey Finch. Mr. Finch, will you please kind of tell the audience who you are and a little bit about yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
My name is Kelsey, and I'm Title VI Civil Rights Organization, TDOT. I have 21 years of experience with TDOT. I'm located in Region 1 in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thank you, Kelsey. I appreciate it. Yeah, the next person I want to introduce is Shabir Begani. Shabir, please join us and give us a little detail about yourself.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shabir Begani. I have been with TDOT going on 1 year next month, and I'm in the role of planning specialist with the Office of Strategic Planning, which is located in headquarters. So I'm excited to be here today and to chat with everyone.
Thank you, Shabir. Also, we have Ms. Jessica Starling. Jessica, can you give us some feedback and let us know about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Jessica Starling. I'm in headquarters, T.IT, and I am a senior business analyst. And I've been employed with TDOT. It will be 2 years this October, but I have been with the state for almost 9 years.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Jessica. Also, we have Dr. David Lee. And Dr. Lee, if you could share some information on who you are. Dr. Lee, I think you're muted.
I already forget unmute myself. So I'm David Lee, working at the Long Range Planning Division, and I have been at the TDOT for 5 years.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lee. And also we have Miss Jamie Johnson. Miss Johnson, hello, and share us a little bit about who you are.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Operations District Specialist in Region 4, Memphis Construction. I've been with TDOT for 4 years now.
Outstanding, great. And lastly, we have Mr. Miles Menace. And Miles, share us with the participants who you are.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Miles Menace. I'm a rising senior at the University of Kentucky, and I'm also a TDOT Civil Rights Division summer intern in the Affirmative Action Program.
Great, outstanding. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And so let's kind of get into our discussion here today and see what we can kind of uncover and discuss here this afternoon. First of all, we're looking at two different issues. We're looking at, with our questions, we're looking at introspection into ourselves and also on the issue of race. And also we're looking at like marginalization as well and how that affects. And so when we talk about those two different items, we're really looking for the panelists to kind of share and do some self-reflection, and also too for us to have some understanding and self-awareness when we discuss these different matters. And in addition to that is that when we talk about marginalization, we're looking at matters that where one group may feel that issues or things that are happening, wherever they are in the world, that they receive less importance and they need to, they're kind of left outside of the circle, so to speak. So we'll kind of touch on those things here today and really kind of delve into it with the feedback we get from our panelists. My first question to our panelists, and I'll give that over to Miss Jessica Starling to start off with us. What does diversity mean to you?
Vince, in short, diversity is recognition of differences. And those differences could be outside of what's accepted by the norm in society, or it could merely be the differences that you perceive from yourself. I think that diversity can really be attached to literally anything, from differences in opinion, to appearance, to religion, to economic status, whatever. But diversity is going to be in just about every facet of our lives.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that. What about you, Kelsey? What does diversity mean to you?
Diversity, to me, is more of a cultural term. It can have many different meanings for many different cultures. Um, um, Diversity is a way of inclusion in the workplace. It's a way of allowing organization to be nimble, to be um, uh, energetic, to be new, because they have many different aspects of people, and have all those represented. It gives you a diverse culture, and so to me, diversity is a cultural term.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Um, Miss Jamie Johnson, can you give us kind of what's your definition of diversity and what it means to you?
Diversity means to me being accepted and being accepted for the way I was created. It means realizing that each and every one of us was created in a unique manner, and we all have our special little things about us. So that's what it means to me.
Awesome. Mr. Shabir Pagani, what about you? What does diversity mean to you?
Yeah, for me, diversity means like having an array of differences or variety. In the context of work, it can mean a diversity of thought. It can mean diversity of skill sets, or difference in skill set, difference in thought. Um, and to me, it helps enrich an environment when you have diversity. And you can see that in nature. Things typically do well when there's diversity and variety of things going on. So to me, that's what it means. Just differences, it means variety, and it means it's better together when different. So
Okay, outstanding. Appreciate it. Um, Dr. Lee, what does diversity mean to you? Dr. Lee, I think you muted.
Sorry again. So to me, it's more recognition of individuals' differences. You know, all different ideology and thought and way of thinking and mindset and worldview. Sometimes a belief in all different, but you know, understanding. It doesn't mean that you need to agree with those differences, but you accept. At least you accept those differences and understand and try to more positive attitude for those differences. So in society, I think a diverse society can tolerate those kind of differences. Of course, it may entail some conflict sometimes if the opinions not agreeable. And people in diverse societies, more like a different dialect, different languages. It's hard to communicate sometimes. So if we are not speaking the same language, it's hard to be accepted. So in a way, you know, in United States, it's a melting pot, and it's an example of a diverse society in the world. All the representation from all over the world are here, so which is a great asset and strength we have. Sometimes we often worry about it's our disadvantage and problem source, but I see different way. It can be really, really diplomatically in the world. I think that holds our competitiveness in the world competition. So we need to embrace that differences and strengthen our you know, weaknesses in how we come up with that you know, synergy. So that is diversity to me.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lee. Miles, you're new to TDOT here just a few weeks. What does diversity kind of mean to you in your walk?
So I see diversity as a way of functioning in terms of like in terms of like working as like one body. So when you think about like an individual, like a human being, you think about one body with as many parts. So if one body is made up of just one part, it's not functioning how it's destined to function. But if one body has several different parts, it's able to function and operate how it was destined to operate.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it, Miles. Over the last 30 days, the news media has probably, we've seen a lot of things happen, from COVID-19 spikes going back up to unemployment rising, but also too there's other recent events with social change that are happening. What are your feelings about these recent events, and what are your thoughts on those particular pieces? I'm going to start with Miss Jamie Johnson first.
Um, in the last few days or the last 30 days, I've been, I can honestly say, mad, sad, angry, happy about the situation. I've been everywhere with it. Um, just because of some things that have went on, you know, we lost a human being just to negligence, you know, or somebody that just wanted to be, I guess, evil. But at the same time, that brought unity from other cultures and other races. So that helped. It opened the eyes of other people. Um, just sad because, you know, there's no regard for other human life in that situation. And then mad because how? You know, how did this happen to someone who shouldn't have been in that situation, or it wasn't that serious to go that far with the situation. I mean, and then, you know, there's other instances that has happened, and again we have the same problems, that there's no regard for human life. especially at a time like this with COVID going on, we're losing our lives just because we have a respiratory problem. But then you also have humans take other people's lives. It's just, I've been a ball of different emotions this entire time.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Lee, what is your feelings about the recent events, and what's your thoughts?
Not only the recent event, but time to time we hear similar kind of news in the media, and it's always a possibility out there something happen like that. It's coming from, I believe, maybe it is impossible to change every individual's mindset because they are all grown up and adult, and they have a different mindset. So even they are not listening to the parents or teachers, and it's probably impossible to change every individual, but there is a society-wide responsibility. That's why we do show collectively some opinion about what's happening, and try to change our system in the legally or any behavioral educational opportunity. We can spread that commonality and how we think, if it is not right, and things to be changed. So we try to encourage each other, and then try to educate the young generation. So that's a society-wide responsibility. But individual level, it's sometimes out of control. And then speaking about racism, I honestly confess that I've been in this lovely United States for over 20 years, and I chose to be here since my school, and spending over 20 years. I am facing racism every day. But if you look at that as dark side, I mean, you become very torn apart person, and shows those angers every day. But instead of, I try to fight against every day. I try to avoid that situation. So as an individual level, I'm trying to protect myself, being away from the situation. So don't want to be victim. I have been victim many times, honestly. If you want to know all the detail, I can share a lot. It's all different group, all different people, and some people just passing by and yelling at me, and then throw something, and you cannot respond to all those unacceptable behaviors. So there are two parts. I think it's very difficult, but as an individual level, I would avoid. But as a society level, we gotta take the responsibility and try to educate the people.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lee. I appreciate it. Shabir, can you share what's kind of been your feelings the last few weeks here?
Yeah, sure. The past few weeks, I've just been feeling element of disappointment, anger at times, but also like this strong sense of determination of making sure that I keep persisting, and I encourage other people persisting to be involved in their community, beyond just, their immediate family, but taking that next step to be involved in other organizations, involved in protest, involved in doing new tasks like maybe learning about legislation and education, just doing my part to help encourage a little bit of all of that, because I think that's what it takes. It takes the protest to bring the attention. It takes the people to really think through what does change look like from system perspective. So we need all kinds of people and elements. So I've just been trying to wrap my brain around what does that look like for me? What does that look like for my family and friends? And how can I challenge all of us to the right level? I like to think of myself as a leader within my friend group. And so that's why I kind of take that ownership of finding pathways forward to improve our situation. And so what that looks like is even at work, joining this panel, I was hesitant because of just past experiences in the workplace. And I think we'll kind of touch on that a little later today. But I was like, you know what? Hey, this is a new opportunity to engage new folks and to provide new awareness. And hopefully that'll lead to action. And to me, that's the most important thing is what are we going to do after this? And I know that's one of the questions later. So to me, I've been feeling also like a sense of hope that things are at a real change going to start happening. So I'm kind of excited for that, but I can't let up. Basically, I don't want to let up. I don't want other people to let up because it takes this time, it takes this energy, it takes a concerted effort across the board to make real change happen.
Okay, thank you, Shabir. Jessica, can you share with us your thoughts?
Sure. I've been on an emotional roller coaster, just to be honest with everybody. Like a lot of you all out there, I felt angry. I felt concerned because I have 3 sons. One is 21, 10, and 11. I felt sad. In some cases, I've even felt visible or like a second or third class citizen. But I've also felt hopeful and inspired by the United Front that everyone has come together in support of the African American community, which makes me very hopeful and inspired to actually go out there and make a change in the environments that I'm able to impact. So I agree with the other panelists. It's like, okay, it's great to have the discussions, and I'm very excited to be on this panel to, bring awareness to everything that's going on. But I'm just curious and excited to be a part of the change that I feel is coming.
Outstanding. Thank you. I appreciate it. And then you kind of touched on a matter that I think we want to kind of flesh out as well there, Jessica. We've all noticed that there have been a multitude of races and ethnic groups that have been involved in these discussions over the last several weeks, more than we've probably seen in the past. Why is there so much unity now surrounding this issue of racial inequality and things of that nature? What is probably causing that piece? And can someone kind of share on that? Kelsey, can you give me your perspective on that?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. It's a very positive thing to see. I think one thing that is kind of out there, being on the battle for 20 years, normally in this situation, we would turn to the African American church as a look for leadership within the church. Well, if your church is like mine, which is my church is a Baptist church, 175 years old, most of the parishioners 60, 70, 80, some even 90 years old. Well, we haven't met since the middle of March. And so there's no meetings at church, and it's kind of a controlled leadership. It's been more of an organic movement. I think that's been a positive thing. I've been really proud to see the diversity in the protest and the diversity of thought. And I think the young people do a good job.
Outstanding. Miles, can you give us your perspective? What do you think is what's kind of causing this new era of unity and folks kind of coming together on one cause there?
I kind of want to go back just a little bit and speak on the initial question lead up to that. That'll kind of better explain where I'm coming from. But to kind of go back, I would say that my thoughts on this whole, especially the last 30 days, on everything that's transpired here in the U.S. and around the world, I would say that to the African American community, to young and old, and to also minorities and majorities in general, I would say that any type of racial inequality, any type of injustice of any sort that comes to anyone is not their inheritance. Um, that's not my inheritance as a young man in any part of the world to sit to have to worry about stepping outside, to have to, you know, wear a certain amount of wear a certain clothing and be treated, you know, how I was supposed to be treated to begin with, which is my inheritance. You know, I get treated differently when I wear something like this rather than when I wear a sweatshirt, um, and t-shirts and sweatpants. Um, but people may not know that, you know, until they go through it, if they even go through it. But all that to say, my thoughts on that is that that's nobody's inheritance. Your inheritance is supposed to be about peace and order and love and respect. Um, and so it's a thing of self-evaluation. So my call to action for people is to try to evaluate where they are in that area, and realize what are they passing down to young individuals, and what has been passed down to them. But to answer the question about the unity, I would say I don't really think it's unity in some ways, only because I think it's unity in terms that, yes, the races are coming together, but I don't think it's unity in terms of some people's intents. If everybody's on one accord, then it's unity. But I know that there's different motives and different intents in the same atmosphere. So it's, instead of gathering, it's collecting. Gathering is one word and collecting is another. When you're gathered together, you're there on one accord and you're there to accomplish something. But when you're collected, it's almost as if it's out of a feeling rather than it's out of a feeling and emotion rather than out of morals, values, standards, and foundation. So my aspect, like what I back to what Mr. Finch said, um, about like it's organic. It is organic, but it's also there's a for the young, for the youth. There's no order in terms of their intent. So it's almost about like their internal motives. If the church was open, then they would learn order. So how can people learn how to lead? Young people learn how to lead, they never know how to follow. And so that's the inheritance that should have been passed down. And that's why I think it's important to have, you know, civil leaders and church leaders teaching youth how to go about with order.
Okay. Thanks, Shabir. Go right ahead, Shabir.
Yeah. So to the question, I just want to add that I think a lot of people have just been right, and they want to see more action. And they saw the protests and the police brutality come to broader light in about 2014, 2015 or so. Kind of like with some of the marquee, you know, I don't want to say like marquee, but the bigger names that we all heard about, such as Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, and Freddie Gray. And I think seemingly, like seeing that seemingly like resurgence, the same thing has ignited folks in a new way. And so it's become less of an anomaly. And it's so it's kind of like the civil rights movement that seems like it was so long ago. And then now this thing kind of popped up in 2014, like, and people probably felt like, oh, this is just an anomaly, or this isn't true of systemic issues. And then now they're seeing it again, like, oh, well, when you guys rung that alarm in 2014, 2015, you know, now we see that this is really a for real problem. And it's not just impacting one community. Now I think the other communities are seeing it as, hey, these are our friends are impacted, or they're seeing more of other folks being impacted, and they're feeling more compelled. I do agree that I think it is an organic piece of it. And I think part of what we're seeing the youth do is agitate, which I think is very important. What I think we could see more of is people, maybe I'll say even like myself, and I think I'm doing it on a small scale, but our more seasoned folks coming in with a strategy. So now we got the young folks agitating, and the older folks who may not need to be on the front lines are in the background really developing strategies instead of watching the young folks do the agitating. You know, we need that collective effort happening, and let that organicness happen. That's good. And I think the more we have these conversations that inspire folks to say, okay, I'm really big on transportation. So what can I do to make sure we have better roads in our communities, which help build progress? What can I do, in this space? And kind of doing that in all the other spaces, those who are accountants and those who are this. How can we fund certain initiatives? How can we make a political pact? I think that unity is coming. And I think we just have to dig deeper for ourselves. Again, challenge our friends. So if we have those pastors, say, Pastor, I know you're at home and you're a faith leader. What can you do at home via WebEx or some sort of video stream? How can you still challenge your people to do something? So, for example, I've been attending Mount Zion Baptist Church. They put a challenge out there for folks to start a checking account with Citizens Bank, which is a local African-American bank, like African-American owned. So those type of things help. They're still out there. We're not in or at least I didn't attend in service. So they still did a live stream and put the challenges out there for folks to act. So I think that's still happening. We just have to do it more and with more strategic thought. And I think Miles had a great point of having that order, but I don't want to say that the agitation isn't necessary. That's very necessary. And I think that's got us to where we are today.
Okay. Dr. Lee, you had mentioned that you kind of had some personal challenges, and got a response here from one of the participants of our meeting today, and one of the questions they asked was, and we're not sure if that's where you were headed, with COVID-19 and a lot of that has been happening here, how has that kind of affected you and you personally? And have you received any type of discrimination during this period of time?
Not particularly related to the COVID-19, but it's as I said at the beginning, it's more like an individual mindset and then prejudice. So education is so important, and Shabir mentioned about how we can educate, through the community to come up with more unity. But I think that there is a danger when you it's I think human nature is natural in people, tend to categorize themselves. They generalize themselves and they just easily group them, For me, I'm not African American. I'm not, white Anglo. So where should I belong to? I am solely alone at TDOT. I don't see many other Asians, and I never thought about it. I'm an Asian American. I changed my citizenship years ago to be, and choosing this country as my country. I see every individual. If it is a Vince, you, and it's a Vince. I'm not looking at you as an African American. If I look at the Shabir, he's my colleague, he's a Shabir. I don't need to know where you're coming from, right? So if you are nailing down where I coming from, and that's often question I get from day one in the United States 20 years ago, and they always ask, where are you from? So I said, hey, I'm from Ohio. Hey, where are you from originally? So doesn't matter. So why you are keep asking me where I'm from? What is the importance, right? To know that, and then you categorize me as alienating. Hey, you are not part of me. You are something different. So day to day, they have to remind myself, my identification. It's a two-sided coin. How I identify myself, but people remind you as your categorization. There is a danger always you put into certain category, you cannot get out of that category. So just to be yourself, you are just individual. You can show your anger if it is violating human rights and it's affecting other people's life and threatening. You need to stand up and you should say something, but not because of you are the same group you feel. There is nothing I am affiliated here if you come up with that concept, right? help me out. Where should I belong to, right? I belong to you guys. You are a family at TDOT, and out of all the heartbreaking in my lifetime, and I chose to be here as for my workplace, spending majority of my time with all the colleagues. So I need to hear more about compliment and cheer up. Hey, David, you're awesome. Let's work on something. So don't care. We need to have sunglasses and wear the mask to disguise ourselves. Otherwise, if we all hear about our voices, that will be a lot easier. So I appreciate that you gave me the opportunity to speak out.
Sure, no problem. Kind of moving forward in the essence of time here. As we kind of move toward the discussion toward kind of marginalization pieces there, are there certain, I would say, opportunities that are given to individuals on the basis of their ability and skill sets for everyone? Or do you think that some of those things are kind of met where it stays with one particular group as opposed to one to the whole body? I'll start there with Jamie.
I think sometimes you're giving your opportunities based on your abilities and skill set, and sometimes it's who you know. There can be people who don't have any kind of education, that has never had any experience in this, and just because, oh, that's my dad's best friend son, he's going to get that opportunity over anyone else. So I believe sometimes it just depends on the situation and who you are.
Gotcha. Great. Jessica, same question. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, are there things that looking at a person's skill set and where they are and their station, are there things that kind of prohibit them from kind of moving forward, and only opportunities are kind of laid out in certain groups? What's your thoughts?
I agree with Jamie 100%, and I've seen it firsthand. So, yes, sometimes people do get opportunities based on their skills and abilities. Other times, like Jamie said, it's who you know. And I've experienced it personally. I've been passed over for positions in the past that I was well qualified to do, and then around and was told to train the person that I was passed over for the position. And for me, that felt like a slap in the face, because if I've been working my way up to a supervisory or managerial type position, and you go outside because the VP of the organization's best friend's child just graduated from college and they want a good paying job, that kind of defeats, to me, why am I trying so hard if they're just going to pick who they want for the position anyway? So I do believe that there are situations where skills and abilities come into place, but more times than not, it is who you know. That's been my experience.
Okay. Kelsey, I'll pitch that one over to you.
I would just echo what Jessica said, that there are many times within this organization, TDOT, that there seems to be a preference for groups of people who know people, who have a connection, and that's just the way it's been. And I'm not sure how through a human resource situation you can handle that. We have such a computer-based, online-based employment system now, with not a lot of interaction, and so it makes it even tougher to know who's who and who's getting what position for what reason.
Okay. Shabir, I think you were going to chime in on that.
Yeah, I agree with what they've been saying, and I would also add that I think sometimes the comments that are like associated with this would be, do you fit the culture? And so sometimes during the interview process, that's what, it's very important, right? You want your team to mesh well. You want people to be able to produce work and get things done together. But sometimes you know, the questions about what are your favorite things, or like the unique questions, like what are your hobbies, those build, to me, the connectors on, can we get along? Can we work together? Or do we have similar experiences that lay the groundwork for us to work together and build relationship as we do work together? And I think sometimes with different cultures, you just don't have those experiences. And maybe not even just cultures, be just where you grew up. So if you grew up in the inner city without access to, you know, farm life, you may not understand what it's like to go fishing. And so when they bring up, a hobby of theirs is to go fishing and to do certain things, you just may not have had that experience, or you don't say, well, I went up to go skiing in Colorado. That wasn't a function of how you grew up. And so sometimes that could be a thing of like, well, I don't know, we're gonna, obviously that's just an example, right? But that could be a thing of where people will say, well, I don't know if this is the right fit, because I don't know if we could, if we have some of the similar experiences that we can kind of build and work together from. So I think that's something that we could keep in mind when it relates to the HR way, or perspective of keeping in mind, what does that mean when we say culture? I think it lends more toward the core values of the organization, and that's what we want to keep in mind. But sometimes it tips over into like the people part that kind of then makes it to where it's easier to pick someone who's more like you versus someone who's the best qualified.
Okay. Thank you. From a individual perspective, how can we build bridges toward more inclusion and create a pathway that we all kind of connect and work together, both in our workplace, but also to um, what else is it that you guys personally can do to kind of help build more inclusion? Jessica?
I think communication is always going to be key when we're trying to move from one position to another. And honestly, I think first we need to decide whether diversity is really important. It doesn't make sense to move towards something that a lot of the key people who have the power and authority to move us there, if they're not on board with it. So first, decide whether it's important. And if it is deemed to be important, then it needs to be prioritized through strategic discussions around the current culture, identifying areas of improvement, and creating an environment where people feel free to give honest feedback and insights on their experiences. And based on that feedback that's received, not just sit on it. We actually have to take some actions. And those actions can be through creating new policies and procedures that will address this stuff, or maybe even having a committee to where situations or circumstances arise that people feel like they need to file a grievance, but may not feel comfortable going to HR or to their immediate supervisor. Having a committee to where anonymously they could possibly voice their opinions without the fear of retaliation. I think having something in that kind of perspective available for employees in an organization is going to be important and necessary for making changes to better where we are.
Gotcha. Kelsey, you have anything to add to that?
Like I said, was well said and very important. I would just echo what she said.
Okay, sounds great. I'm gonna kind of change up that question because Jessica kind of moved ahead of my next question. This is kind of a question that our commissioner and I have talked about as well. Um, it's one where, what is it that TDOT um, you would like to see TDOT to improve at here at work in order in this area. And I think Jessica kind of touched a little bit on that as well. But what is it that TDOT can do and we can do on the outside as well? Shabir.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm gonna unmute myself there, but yeah, so I have a few things that I think would be great starts and easy wins, helping us reach our what is it, minority and women and TDOT goals. I think the numbers may be, and obviously y'all could correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 23 and 26%, or what's the goals again? Do you know them offhand, Vince?
Not offhand, I do not. Not offhand.
Okay, but either I think to help us achieve those, like if we're able to achieve those goals, that will help us with diversity by literally just getting us to critical mass. Some ways to do that is by recruiting at specific organization events. So, for example, right now I'm wearing my National Society of Black Engineers pin, right? So going to a career fair specific to organizations that highlight individuals who have the skill sets that we need at TDOT. Also, SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and SWE, Society of Women Engineers, literally having our presence there to say, hey, we are a government agency, but we're proactively getting out here to recruit and be the best and number one, transportation agency. So I think that's an easy win. Also, really pursuing to have our executive leadership have more ethnic diversity. And so that may take different recruiting strategies. It may take a little bit more creativity in how we develop our leaders along the way. And so that may look like a minority leadership initiative where we're helping develop those leaders, so we can have better diversity within our directors levels, assistant directors, and above levels. And that literally just let's just take setting out a goal and setting up funding. So a lot of these things, it really kind of goes back to how are we going to prioritize our funds and really work toward a goal. Just like getting a roadway project, the mayors, they advocate for a particular road and they want certain money to go behind making that happen. So I think if we're really serious, we need to make sure we get some real numbers on a budget line and be specific about how we want to see that happen. Be engineer, we are. So.
Okay, great. Dr. Lee, what is it we can do at TDOT to improve working outside the workplace?
Absolutely. I agree with what has been saying, by Shabir. I agree with that opinion. I have been involved in the hiring process for the past 5 years from day one, and it was very challenging to interview all those people. I counted and I stopped counting at some point. It was over 600 people. Every day I was interviewing at least 4 or 5 people. And it was very challenging to distinguish the different skills and capability within 1 hour interview with all those candidates. So but I was always looking into the personnel that who has a first skill set, but my step, my criteria, top criteria in hiring was always whether the person has a good personality. So you can tell by what they are wearing at the interview, showing their attitude and positive, and smile, and by answering those particular questions, we are not really listening that answer. It's more like how they are addressing those topic in different manners. So that was more priority. So hiring individual with a good attitude and good manner is pretty important. That make that the whole TDOT in a health environment. I think if someone with full of negativity, no matter how high salary they get as a compensation or how much praise they get every day by boss, they will complain somehow and keep spreading that negativity throughout the agency and all co-workers. It's really dangerous. So in hiring leadership, I think we all need to avoid that and bring new blood, new way of thinking who can bring the innovation and changes in the way we handle things with the new technology. The adaptability is important. If our resistance to the new changes, we are stuck with the obsolete things. So we have to open our mind and then bring those new thought, new cultural input as well. And another thing is very important. If you're religious, I think I'm praying hard every day. From before I coming into the office, I drive through and looking at the sunshine with the cold breeze. I feel very appreciative. I have a job, I have family here, I have a place to go and work and get paid, and it's a really heaven. It's a no complaint. So that appreciation and spreading out all those appreciative mindset throughout your coworkers and team members, I think it doesn't need to be come from the top down. It should be every individual need to stand up and encourage each other and say hi with a smile, and then hey, touch, you did a great job, excellent, and think I want to learn something from you because you are so good at it. So I want to learn. How can you involve me next time? Let's do the teamwork. More like this conversation. Someone brought that conversation. I think Jamie did that, but communication and good dialogue is a really good starting point. And I would recommend all of you go to the more diverse church. If you are very in silo in the everybody look alike like you, then you may not be open to other thoughts. So I would recommend you just join the diverse group more, and then small group if your church has different group, and you can join to hey, let's go to another international group and see how they talk about things, and encourage people go to the more travel after this situation get better. I think the traveling is always good. You will realize how people are good, having good manner in United States. When I traveled the European country, they were really nasty. So I really I was really happy back home. And when I see the airport and people just smiling, and go to the Kroger, cashier was smiling and talk to me. You don't see that in European countries. So I was very grateful coming back home. So things like that. So lots of encouragement with positivity. I think that's all we can do at the individual level.
Okay. Jamie, can you add to that? What can TDOT do here at work and also outside the workplace?
So I think the first thing that TDOT can do internally is make diversity a big and serious thing. We talk about it, we just touch on the subject of it, or we just touch on the surface of it, but we don't get deep down, in my opinion, we don't get deep down into it. And I think we need to do that internally first. I think we need to start having those uncomfortable conversations and having an open mind when we're having those uncomfortable conversations, because a lot of them are uncomfortable, but it's everyone's reality. Um, I think TDOT can also do some things in the community, especially I'm in Region 4, I'm in Memphis. So, of course, when people think TDOT here, people think the big yellow truck. They don't realize how big the organization is and how far we go and we overextend. I do a lot of volunteering work as much as possible. And I've been wanting to get a team together so we all can volunteer together. And it might be something like Girls Inc. or any organization that have events going on. Granted, Corona is going on, so nothing is really, we haven't been volunteering, or I haven't been volunteering a lot. But I think we need to get out into our communities and get involved in it. And the last thing that's very near and dear to me is we need to do HBCU recruiting. I am a graduate of Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I think we need to reach out to our HBCUs. We have HBCUs here in Tennessee, and I have yet to hear of us going to any of the career fairs. You know, I'm a transplant in Memphis, but I have yet to hear, hey Jamie, can we get in contact with Southern so we can go down there and there's plenty of DOTs that actually recruit at Southern. So I think HBCU recruiting should be a way to diversify the department.
Well, I will say this. I know that HR and in civil rights, that's one of the things that we've done. I know we probably haven't reached out to you, Jamie, but we do. We go to those HBCUs. I actually spent a lot of time at them myself here since I've been here the last few months, and it's you know it's a piece, and I've talked to that with my deputy commissioner, Galbato, and that is a focus. I think we get out there and do those things, and they make it a real focus on that. We sometimes don't always able to pick those individuals out of there. I think they go to other places or other DOTs as well. We lose out sometimes, but a very good point, to say the least. Miles, we only have a few minutes here before we ending here, but you're brand new to TDOT and getting ready to come out of University of Kentucky. And you've seen a little bit of what we do here in our civil rights division. Um, I would say, from your standpoint, um, what is it that TDOT can do or do outside the workplace to um, for in areas of diversity?
I would say, um, I would definitely say don't overlook certain students and individuals who are looking for career paths who may not have the majors that people um, are originally set to have, like set to those kind of standards. Like don't overlook that because you may not recognize what kind of gifts people have in those areas. Um, and so I kind of see that in some areas. So that's the first thing. The next thing I would say was definitely to um, like I said, recognize the value, but take a seat. Recognize the value in others, but take a seat at other tables. Um, Invite other people to other tables. Like have a sense of invitation, because if nobody's going to collectively like sit together on their own, it takes opportunity and it takes that appointed time and it takes that one person to reach out to another. But also to add to that, like I want to kind of edify exactly what Mr. Dr. Lee was saying. He was definitely saying he said something that kind of resonated in terms of kind of reaching out to others. But when you reach others, they're like sometimes we can recognize that there's an aspect that happens where when you reach out to somebody who has talent, or you can recognize that you can recognize that in them, don't feel, but kind of show them how they need to navigate that because you may be blocking your own blessings in that aspect if you see them as a threat rather than as a gift.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Um, had a couple of things that came up, a couple of questions. What was HBCUs? Those are historically black colleges and universities. So that's a great question. Sorry about those acronyms, everyone. So, but yeah, we're here now on our uh, toward the end, and we're trying to keep it to 1 o'clock. Um, I really appreciate everyone being able to be on this panel and sharing. I mean, it has been, it's always good to have a good understanding of what other folks who are and how you walk in your own shoes. I think you guys did an excellent job. I think Jamie, she shot me a message here and said, "Hey, you know what? This should be longer." And you know, Jamie, it should be, but we're taking intermittent steps here, and we're going to do this series, and then we're going to do some more things as well to try to continue down this road to have these type of discussions. And it's always helpful as we continue to grow, because the main thing about it is as we continue to hear things that are uncomfortable, it's like your own growth process as well, both mentally and physically, but also a workplace growth. But again, thank you all for joining us. I'd like to thank all the participants that were able to join us as well. I will say this here. It's one of those things where we have really been truly, I guess, blessed in the standpoint that we have some folks that in our organization really supports these type of initiatives. And so I'd like to thank the commissioner and our senior leadership team for this opportunity to put on this series. I think it goes a long way where we're headed as an agency and organization. And again, thank you all for joining us, and we appreciate it. Have a great day.
There's a question.
I'm sorry, Dr. Yes, Dr. Lee.
There was something in chat.
I'm sorry.
Good. Before we.
Yeah. We're. I'm going to pull some of those up, and what I'm going to do is send back and send out any things that we did not cover. We're going to cover those as well. Thanks, Dr. Lee. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Thank you.